Hey guys, tonight we wander back through thousands of years of human history to discover how people protected their homes before modern locks. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a small prehistoric settlement as evening settles across the landscape. The last orange glow of daylight slips behind distant hills. Smoke drifts lazily from cooking fires. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks at shadows moving beyond the fields. Families are gathering inside their homes, and every one of them shares the same concern that people still have today. How do you keep unwanted visitors out when the sun goes down? It sounds simple enough, but you quickly realize that your modern front door, complete with a metal lock, security camera, and perhaps a forgotten password on your phone, would seem like pure wizardry here. In fact, if you suddenly appeared carrying a smart lock and explaining Bluetooth connectivity, you would probably be treated with equal parts admiration and suspicion. You probably won't survive this conversation without someone assuming you're a traveling magician. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, feel free to post your location and local time down in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is listening from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself among some of the earliest farming communities on Earth. Long before locks existed, before metal keys jingled in pockets, before locksmiths could charge alarming amounts of money for emergency visits, people still needed security. The first homes are surprisingly modest. Mud brick walls rise from packed earth. Roofs are made from reeds, wood, and whatever local materials happen to be available. These houses are not fortresses. They are practical shelters designed to keep out weather more than determined criminals. Yet danger is never far away. Food is valuable. Tools are valuable. Livestock are valuable. Even a clay pot filled with grain can represent weeks of labor for an entire family during the coming season. So how do you protect wealth when locks have not yet been invented? The answer is surprisingly simple. You make your house difficult to enter. Many early homes have extremely small entrances. Some settlements even place doors in awkward positions that require crouching or climbing. It is harder to rush into a house when the doorway itself slows you down. Imagine arriving home after a long day and having to crawl through your front entrance every evening. Convenient? Not particularly. Effective? Surprisingly, yes. Ancient builders quickly discover something every security expert still understands. If you cannot stop intruders entirely, you can at least make them work harder. You notice thick wooden beams resting beside entrances. At night, these beams are placed across doorways. They are not locks in the modern sense. They simply block access. Sometimes the most ancient security system is just a very heavy piece of wood. A joke almost writes itself here. Thousands of years later, humans invent fingerprint scanners, facial recognition, and encrypted digital security. Yet, somewhere in history, a homeowner proudly announces, "My anti-theft technology is this really large stick." And honestly, it works better than you might expect. Communities themselves provide another layer of protection. Early villages are tightly connected. Everybody knows everybody. If a stranger appears, people notice. If someone is sneaking around after dark, people notice. If somebody suddenly acquires 3 extra goats that clearly belonged to someone else yesterday, people definitely notice. This social surveillance becomes one of humanity's oldest security systems. Historians often point out that reputation carried enormous value in small communities. Being known as dishonest could damage your standing for years. Of course, not every settlement is peaceful. Competition over resources sometimes leads to raids. Entire villages occasionally construct defensive walls around their communities. You walk through one such settlement, A wooden palisade surrounds the homes. Sharp stakes point outward. A single entrance allows access. The goal is not perfection. The goal is delay. Even today, security experts often emphasize that good protection buys time. Ancient communities understood the same principle instinctively. A wall gives defenders time to react. A narrow entrance creates a bottleneck. A barking dog creates a warning. And yes, dogs become some of humanity's earliest security partners. Long before modern alarm systems, dogs provide ears and noses far superior to those of humans. Many archaeological sites suggest close relationships between humans and dogs, stretching back thousands of years. A sleeping villager might miss approaching footsteps. A dog rarely does. You can almost picture the scene. The village sleeps peacefully. An intruder creeps toward a house. A dog immediately decides this is everyone's problem. Security achieved. Meanwhile, some homes rely on architectural tricks. In certain ancient settlements, houses are built close together with few exterior openings. Windows remain tiny or non-existent. This arrangement offers practical advantages. Fewer openings means fewer points of entry. It also helps regulate temperature, which is a welcome bonus when air conditioning is still several thousand years away. One particularly quirky historical tidbit comes from the ancient settlement of Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey. Many homes appear to have been entered through openings in the roof rather than standard street-level doors. You climb a ladder onto the roof and descend into the house from above. It sounds unique because it absolutely is unique. Imagine explaining to a delivery driver that your front door is technically located on the ceiling. Researchers believe this design may have offered defensive advantages while also maximizing limited space. Historians still argue whether security, social organization, ventilation, or a combination of factors primarily motivated such layouts. That uncertainty appears frequently throughout ancient history. The farther back you travel, the more mysteries remain. Sometimes archaeologists discover evidence, sometimes they discover clues, and sometimes they discover an object that inspires decades of academic debate. You continue through the settlement as darkness deepens. Fires flicker inside homes. Families gather around meals. Outside, the night becomes a different world. Without electric lighting, darkness feels heavier than most modern people experience. The shadows are deeper. The sounds are sharper. Every creak of wood seems significant. Security at night becomes partly psychological. A sturdy barrier provides protection, but it also provides peace of mind. Humans have always wanted that feeling. The feeling that the space around you belongs to you. The feeling that your family is safe. The feeling that you can finally rest. In many ways, the history of home security is really the history of pursuing that comfort. You see it in the earliest villages. You see it in fortified towns. You see it in castles and cities yet to come. The tools change. The desire remains remarkably constant. As you settle beside a fire in one of these ancient communities, you begin to notice something interesting. No one here expects perfect security. That idea barely exists. Instead, people layer protections together. Neighbors, dogs, walls, heavy beams, community trust, awkward entrances. None of these measures guarantee safety. Together, however, they create something surprisingly effective. The foundations of home security are already taking shape thousands of years before the first recognizable locks appear. And as civilizations grow larger, wealthier, and more complex, simple wooden beams and watchful neighbors will no longer be enough. Soon, inventive minds along the banks of a great river will begin transforming security forever. The age of locks is approaching.
The night gradually gives way to dawn, and as the first light spreads across the landscape, you leave behind those early villages of beams, barking dogs, and watchful neighbors. The world is changing. Settlements are growing larger. Trade networks stretch farther. Wealth is becoming more concentrated. And whenever humans accumulate valuable possessions, someone inevitably begins wondering how to protect them, and someone else begins wondering how to steal them. You now find yourself standing along the fertile banks of the Nile River in ancient Egypt, where one of the most important breakthroughs in home security is quietly taking shape. At first glance, Egyptian homes do not look particularly revolutionary. Many are built from mud brick. Streets bustle with merchants, craftsmen, laborers, and officials. Yet hidden within some doorways is a device that would influence security technology for thousands of years: the lock. Not the sleek metal lock you know today, of course. This is something much larger, entirely wooden, and frankly enormous by modern standards. But it works, and that is what matters. One mainstream historical fact is that ancient Egyptians developed wooden pin tumbler lock mechanisms more than 3,000 years ago. While primitive compared to modern designs, the basic principle would survive into many later lock systems. You approach a doorway to examine one. The mechanism consists of a wooden bolt that slides into place across the door. Inside the lock are several wooden pins that drop into holes, preventing movement. To unlock the door, a specially shaped wooden key is inserted upward into the mechanism. The key lifts the pins out of the holes, allowing the bolt to slide free. The idea is surprisingly clever. In fact, if the concept sounds familiar, that is because many modern locks still rely on the same basic principle. Correctly positioned pins allow movement, incorrectly positioned pins block it. The difference is mostly of scale. These ancient Egyptian keys can be impressively large. Some are closer in size to a small club than to anything you would comfortably keep in your pocket. You imagine arriving home after work carrying a key the length of your forearm. Lose your keys today, and it is annoying. Lose your key in ancient Egypt, and nearby villagers might mistake it for a farming tool. Even so, these oversized keys become symbols of status. A substantial lock often suggests valuable possessions behind the door. Security and social prestige begin developing an interesting relationship. The better your protection, the more people assume you have something worth protecting. Unfortunately, that creates its own problems. A giant lock can sometimes function as a sign that practically says, "Interesting treasures possibly located here." Human nature has not changed much. You walk through busy neighborhoods where wealthier households employ servants, guards, and complex storage arrangements. Valuable items rarely sit in sight plain. Storage rooms become increasingly important. Chests become important. Administrative buildings become important. As societies grow more organized, protecting records becomes nearly as important as protecting physical goods. Documents, tax records, inventories, and contracts can represent significant power. A lock is no longer merely protecting grain, it is protecting information. That sounds remarkably modern. Historians often emphasize that ancient Egypt possessed an extensive bureaucracy. Managing resources across a large kingdom required record-keeping, and secure storage naturally became valuable. Of course, no lock exists without someone trying to defeat it. The appearance of locks immediately creates a new challenge. How secure are they really? The answer varies. Some locks are excellent for their time. Others are less impressive. A determined intruder with enough patience can often find weaknesses. This pattern will repeat throughout history. Every new security measure inspires new methods of bypassing it. Every improvement encourages fresh creativity from thieves. It becomes a technological conversation lasting thousands of years. You watch a craftsman carefully shaping wooden components. The precision required is surprisingly high. Pins must fit correctly. Channels must align. The key must interact with the mechanism properly. For a technology made entirely from wood, it demonstrates impressive engineering skill. One quirky tidbit from the ancient world is that some keys become so large and distinctive that they serve almost ceremonial purposes in addition to practical ones. Carrying a key can communicate authority. It announces responsibility. It signals ownership. In some cases, being entrusted with a key becomes an important social role.
After all, whoever controls access controls resources, and control of resources often means power. The symbolism of keys eventually becomes deeply rooted in many cultures. Even today, keys often represent trust, authority, or access. The tradition stretches back much farther than most people realize. As you continue exploring, you notice something else. Not every Egyptian household uses sophisticated locks. Many people still rely on simpler methods. Heavy bars remain common. Community awareness remains valuable. Dogs continue contributing enthusiastic opinions whenever strangers appear. Technology rarely replaces older systems immediately. Instead, new methods layer on top of existing ones. A homeowner might use a wooden lock, a barred door, trusted neighbors, and a protective dog all at once. Security works best when multiple measures support each other. That lesson remains true today. You eventually enter a storage building where workers carefully manage supplies. The atmosphere feels almost administrative. Items are counted, inventories are tracked, doors are secured. The entire process reflects a society becoming increasingly organized. Security evolves alongside complexity. Simple villages require simple protections. Large civilizations require something more sophisticated. Yet questions remain. Historians still argue whether some surviving lock designs were widely used among ordinary households or primarily concentrated among wealthier individuals and institutions. Archaeological evidence offers clues, but the complete picture remains uncertain. Ancient life rarely leaves perfect records. Sometimes a lock survives, sometimes a key survives, sometimes only fragments remain. Researchers then piece together the puzzle like detectives separated from the crime scene by several millennia. And occasionally, those puzzles become surprisingly complicated. You imagine future archaeologists studying modern society. Perhaps they discover a garage door opener. Perhaps they discover a smartphone. Perhaps they spend decades debating whether people used tiny glowing rectangles primarily for communication, entertainment, or staring blankly at social media while claiming to be productive. Every era leaves mysteries behind. Ancient Egypt is no exception. As the day grows warmer, trade caravans move along dusty roads, boats glide along the river, merchants transport goods across impressive distances. With increased trade comes increased need for security. Valuable cargo must be protected. Storehouses must be secured. Homes containing imported goods become tempting targets. Locks spread because demand spreads. The invention proves useful. Useful inventions tend to survive. What begins as a wooden mechanism in ancient Egypt eventually influences countless future designs. The journey from simple door bars to engineered locks has begun. Yet Egypt is only one piece of the story. Elsewhere, other civilizations are developing their own approaches to security. Some will focus on architecture, some will focus on community enforcement, some will combine technology and design in fascinating ways. Ahead are the bustling households of Greece and Rome, where home protection becomes woven into daily life through clever construction, guarded entrances, and a few surprisingly intimidating animals waiting near the front door. And if you thought the Egyptian key was oversized, wait until you meet the Roman attitude towards guard dogs.
The Egyptian craftsmen fade into the distance behind you as trade routes, kingdoms, and ideas continue flowing across the ancient world. Wooden locks are no longer a novelty. The concept of controlled access has taken root. Yet security is about much more than a clever mechanism hidden inside a door. As you move westward into the lands of ancient Greece and later Rome, you discover that protecting a home becomes a blend of architecture, social customs, household design, and occasionally a very loud dog with strong opinions about visitors. You arrive first in a Greek city-state. The streets are narrow. Stone buildings line winding roads. Merchants call out prices in crowded marketplaces. Philosophers debate subjects ranging from politics to the nature of existence. Somewhere nearby, a citizen is probably explaining an extremely complicated idea while forgetting where he left his sandals. Life is busy, and busy cities create new security concerns. Unlike the small prehistoric villages you visited earlier, these urban centers contain large populations. Not everyone knows everyone else. Strangers are common. Travelers are common. Trade is constant. That means homeowners can no longer rely entirely on community familiarity to identify threats. The design of Greek homes reflects this reality. You walk down a street and see mostly blank walls. The valuable parts of household life remain hidden behind them. Anyone passing outside gains very little information about what lies within. Even today, security experts recognize the value of limiting visibility into private spaces. Ancient Greeks understood this instinctively. You step through a doorway into a courtyard home. Suddenly, the environment changes. The noisy street disappears. The interior feels calm, protected, and separate from the outside world. Privacy itself becomes a form of security. A potential thief cannot easily target what he cannot see. Of course, doors still matter. Locks continue evolving. Wooden bars remain common. Metalworking improves gradually, allowing stronger hardware and more durable fittings. You notice that protection increasingly depends on layers. Strong doors, limited visibility, family members, servants, neighbors, all contributing to security. Nothing works alone. As Greek influence spreads and eventually gives way to the expanding power of Rome, these ideas become even more sophisticated. Now you find yourself walking through a Roman city. The scale is astonishing. Roads stretch across an empire. Markets overflow with goods. Warehouses store imported products from distant lands. Homes range from modest apartments to luxurious villas, and every property owner faces a familiar question. How do you protect what belongs to you? Romans approached the challenge with characteristic practicality. If something works, use it. If it can be improved, improve it. If it can be engineered more efficiently, someone is probably already working on that. Roman metalworking contributes significantly to lock development. Metal components become more common. Keys become smaller than their Egyptian ancestors, thankfully. You can finally carry one without looking like you're transporting a miniature battering ram. Some Roman keys are small enough to wear as rings. Imagine that, a wearable key. Modern technology companies might call it innovative. Romans were doing a version of it nearly 2,000 years ago. You picture a Roman citizen proudly displaying a ring key while explaining how advanced it is. Human beings have always enjoyed showing off their newest gadgets. The materials simply change. One particularly interesting aspect of Roman security involves household staff. Large homes often include servants, laborers, and other workers. This creates a unique challenge. The threat to security is not always external. Sometimes it comes from people already inside. As a result, Romans frequently used locked storage chests and secured rooms within their homes. Security becomes layered not only between the house and the outside world, but also within the house itself. Certain spaces are accessible to everyone. Others are restricted. The concept feels surprisingly familiar. Office buildings today operate on similar principles. Different people have different levels of access. Ancient Romans might not recognize a digital keycard, but they would understand the basic idea immediately. Meanwhile, architecture continues playing a major role. Many wealthier Roman homes, known as domus, feature controlled entrances. Visitors pass through specific areas before reaching private family spaces. Movement is guided and limited. You cannot simply wander anywhere you like, at least not without attracting attention. And attracting attention is exactly what intruders prefer to avoid. One quirky historical tidbit survives in the form of Roman mosaics displaying warnings about dogs. Some homes famously featured mosaic signs reading "Cave Canem," meaning "Beware of the dog." Archaeologists have uncovered examples, including famous specimens preserved at Pompeii.
You have to admire the honesty. No subtle messaging, no complicated legal language, just a straightforward announcement. Dog present, proceed accordingly. Whether the dog in question is genuinely terrifying or merely enthusiastic remains unclear, but the warning itself serves a purpose. Deterrence matters. Many security measures work because people know they exist. A visible barrier can discourage problems before they begin. A warning sign can achieve results without any actual confrontation. The same principle appears throughout history. The appearance of security often enhances security itself. Historians still argue whether certain Roman locking technologies were widespread among ordinary citizens or concentrated primarily among wealthier households. As with ancient Egypt, evidence survives unevenly. Metal objects often endure better than wood. Archaeological discoveries, therefore, provide only part of the story. The daily experiences of countless ordinary people remain harder to reconstruct. Yet enough evidence survives to reveal a fascinating pattern. Across Greece and Rome, security becomes increasingly intentional. People are no longer merely blocking doors. They are designing spaces, managing access, controlling visibility, using technology, using animals, using social structures. Every aspect of daily life contributes. You stroll through a Roman neighborhood after sunset. Oil lamps flicker in windows. Conversations drift through the evening air. Doors close. Bolts slide into place. Families settle in for the night. Outside, the city remains active, but quieter. A traveler passes by. A merchant finishes unloading goods. A guard patrols nearby streets. Life continues. And beneath it all lies a simple truth. The desire for security grows stronger as societies grow more complex. More trade creates more wealth. More wealth creates more targets. More targets create more motivation for protection. It is an endless cycle. You begin noticing another pattern as well. Every new security measure influences behavior. Locks encourage storage. Storage encourages storage. Storage encourages commerce. Commerce encourages urban growth. Technology and society constantly shape each other. The lock is not merely an object. It is part of a larger story about trust, ownership, and civilization itself. As the Roman world expands, these ideas spread across vast territories. Roads carry goods. Ships carry merchants. Ideas travel alongside them. Soon, however, the stability of empires will begin shifting. Cities will change. Political systems will evolve. And in the centuries ahead, people living behind thick wooden doors and iron fittings will face a world where protection depends not only on locks, but on entire communities standing guard after dark. The medieval age is approaching, bringing with it stronger doors, heavier bars, and neighbors who seem remarkably interested in everyone else's business.
The orderly streets of Rome slowly fade from view. Empires rise, flourish, and eventually transform into something new. Roads remain, buildings remain, ideas remain, but the world entering the medieval period feels different. You find yourself standing before a timber-framed house in a bustling medieval town. The air smells faintly of wood smoke, livestock, baking bread, and a surprising amount of mud. If modern cities are defined by traffic, medieval towns are often defined by mud's determined campaign to appear absolutely everywhere. Your boots sink slightly with each step. A merchant rolls a cart through the street. A blacksmith's hammer rings somewhere nearby. Church bells echo across rooftops. And security has become everyone's concern. The medieval world can be dangerous, but not in the dramatic way movies suggest. Most people are not constantly fending off armies or hiding from wandering bands of villains. Daily life is usually quieter than that. Still, theft happens, disputes happen, Travelers come and go, and protecting one's home remains an important task. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval doors often relied on heavy wooden construction reinforced with iron straps, hinges, and fittings. These doors were built not merely to close an opening, but to resist force. You place your hand against one. It feels solid. Massive wooden planks are fitted together carefully. Iron bands strengthen weak points. A sturdy crossbar rests nearby. At night, the homeowner slides the bar into brackets across the inside of the door. Simple, effective, heavy, very heavy. You quickly realize that medieval security places great faith in the principle that a large object is difficult to move. The principle remains surprisingly reliable. No batteries required, no software updates required, no warning message telling you to download the latest security patch, just wood and iron doing exactly what they were designed to do. As evening approaches, you notice another layer of protection: town gates. Many medieval towns are enclosed by walls. At sunset, gates may be closed or carefully monitored. People entering after dark attract attention, sometimes lots of attention. If you arrive late and unfamiliar, someone is probably going to ask questions, several questions, potentially many questions. Medieval communities tend to be curious, very curious. In small towns and villages, privacy often operates differently than it does today. Neighbors observe everything: who arrives, who leaves, who buys a new horse, who suddenly owns 3 new chickens, who claims those chickens were always theirs. This social awareness becomes an important security tool. You remember those prehistoric villages where everyone knew everyone else? The same principle remains alive. Human observation continues doing a great deal of work. In fact, many medieval communities rely heavily on collective responsibility. Residents are expected to report suspicious behavior. Neighbors watch over neighboring properties. Travelers who behave oddly attract notice. Sometimes this system works extremely well. Sometimes it leads to gossip reaching astonishing levels. You imagine a medieval resident attempting to keep a secret. The odds are not encouraging. By lunchtime, half the town probably knows. By dinner, the chickens know too. Inside homes, security continues evolving. Storage chests become increasingly important. A well-made chest functions almost like a miniature vault. Valuable items remain inside. Documents remain inside. Coins remain inside. Sometimes the chest itself is secured with a lock. Sometimes the chest is so heavy that moving it becomes its own challenge. You examine one particularly large example. It appears less like furniture and more like an object specifically designed to discourage ambition. A thief considering theft must first consider lifting it. The answer is usually no. Metalworking advances gradually throughout the medieval period. Locks become more sophisticated. Keys become more varied. Locksmithing develops into a respected craft. A skilled locksmith possesses specialized knowledge that few others understand. Security technology is becoming professionalized. That trend will continue for centuries. Meanwhile, castles dominate parts of the landscape. Even if you're not living inside one, their influence shapes local life. Castles represent concentrated security: moats, walls, gatehouses, towers, multiple defensive layers. The principles employed by castles often inspire smaller-scale household protections. You cannot build a moat around every cottage, at least not conveniently, but you can strengthen doors. You can control access. You can create barriers. The logic remains the same. Delay intruders, increase effort, create opportunities to respond. One quirky medieval tidbit involves door knockers and symbolic decorations. Some households display carvings, religious symbols, or protective imagery near entrances, partly decorative, partly spiritual, partly psychological. Many people believe that protection comes not only from physical barriers, but also from blessings, symbols, and divine favor. The line between practical security and spiritual security is often blurred. If a carved symbol above the door makes a family feel safer, that reassurance has value. Throughout history, people frequently combine physical and symbolic protection. You notice another important feature. Windows remain relatively small in many buildings. Glass is expensive. Large openings create vulnerabilities. Smaller windows provide fewer opportunities for unwanted entry. The design is practical, and in winter, smaller openings help retain heat, a pleasant bonus. Historians still argue whether certain medieval household security practices varied primarily because of wealth, regional traditions, or local threat levels. Different regions produce different solutions. A merchant in a busy trading city faces different concerns than a farmer in a remote village. A noble household requires different protections than a craftsman's workshop. Security adapts to circumstance. There is never a single universal system. You spend time walking through the town after sunset. Torches flicker, doors close, bars slide into place. The sounds of daily business gradually fade. Night changes everything. Without electric lights, darkness feels deeper than modern people often experience. Visibility drops sharply. Sounds travel farther. A single footstep can seem surprisingly loud. Security becomes as much about awareness as barriers. People listen carefully. Dogs bark occasionally. Neighbors remain alert. The entire town seems to settle into a shared understanding. Night belongs to caution. You pass a watchman carrying a lantern. He moves deliberately through the streets. His presence reassures residents. Visible security has value. Even if nothing happens, people sleep better knowing someone is paying attention. That lesson survives into modern policing, private security, and neighborhood patrols. The tools change, the psychology remains remarkably familiar. As you continue your walk, you notice something that links every era you visited so far. No one trusts a single solution. Not prehistoric villagers, not Egyptians, not Greeks, not Romans, not medieval townspeople. Everyone layers protections together. Strong doors, heavy bars, community vigilance, dogs, walls, locks, reputation. Each element reinforces the others. Human beings have always understood that security is strongest when multiple defenses overlap. And while ordinary households rely on these practical measures, wealthier people are beginning to develop even more elaborate strategies. Behind manor walls and inside castles, secret rooms, hidden compartments, carefully guarded treasures await. Soon you will step into a world where protecting valuables becomes an art form all its own.
The medieval town settles behind you as the road climbs gently toward larger estates, fortified manors, and imposing castles. The farther you travel, the more obvious it becomes that wealth creates its own unique security challenges. A farmer, protecting a few tools and sacks of grain, worries about one set of problems. A noble family, protecting silver, jewelry, important documents, rents collected from tenants, and generations of accumulated wealth, worries about another. You approach a manor house, standing beyond a stone wall. Lantern light glows warmly through narrow windows. Servants move about, finishing evening tasks. Somewhere inside, a steward is probably counting inventories for the third time, because trusting numbers has never come naturally to human beings. The house feels secure, not because of any single feature, because of many features working together. One mainstream historical fact is that wealthy medieval households often stored valuables in strong chests, reinforced with iron bands and fitted with increasingly sophisticated locks.
These chests could hold coins, legal documents, jewelry, seals, and other items considered essential to family wealth. You step inside one such hall. The room is large. Heavy beams stretch overhead. A fire crackles in the hearth, and against one wall sits a chest that looks capable of surviving a small siege. The iron fittings gleam in the firelight. The lock is substantial. The lid weighs enough to discourage casual curiosity. It is clear that opening this container requires permission, or determination, preferably the first. Throughout history, portable wealth presents a unique challenge. A house itself cannot easily disappear. A box of coins absolutely can. As a result, people devote tremendous effort to securing the things most likely to be stolen. You quickly notice that storage itself becomes a specialized craft. Some chests contain hidden compartments. Others include multiple locking points. A few incorporate clever internal arrangements designed to frustrate thieves unfamiliar with their operation. Human creativity flourishes whenever valuable objects are involved, and nowhere is this more evident than in castles. You eventually arrive at one. Its walls rise high above the surrounding landscape. Towers overlook roads and fields. Gatehouses control access. Everything about the structure communicates a simple message. Getting inside without permission will be difficult, perhaps very difficult. The castle represents security elevated into architecture. Every feature contributes. Outer walls delay intruders. Inner courtyards create additional barriers. Narrow passages control movement. Doors reinforce critical areas. The design reflects centuries of practical experience. People learn what works, then they improve it, then they improve it again. Even within castles, however, security remains layered. Not every room is equally important. Certain chambers receive additional protection. Treasury rooms, armories, archives, private family quarters. Access becomes increasingly restricted. You cannot simply wander wherever you wish, at least not if you hope to avoid uncomfortable conversations with armed guards, and those conversations rarely begin with good news. One particularly fascinating development involves hidden spaces. Many large residences contain concealed compartments, secret storage locations, and occasionally hidden passages. Popular stories often exaggerate their frequency, but such features do exist. A concealed niche inside a wall can protect documents. A hidden compartment beneath flooring can conceal valuables. A disguised storage space can keep important items out of sight. Sometimes the best security comes from secrecy itself. If nobody knows something exists, nobody attempts to steal it. You imagine a noble carefully hiding family documents behind a removable stone. The arrangement feels surprisingly modern. People still hide valuables in unusual places today. The locations simply change. Instead of behind masonry, perhaps behind bookshelves. Instead of beneath floorboards, perhaps inside cleverly disguised containers. The instinct remains identical. Protect important things by making them difficult to find. One quirky historical tidbit concerns priest holes and concealed spaces associated with periods of religious tension in later centuries. Some houses incorporated remarkably clever hiding places designed to conceal individuals or sensitive materials from authorities. The craftsmanship involved could be extraordinary. Panels blended seamlessly into walls. Passages disappeared behind ordinary-looking surfaces. Entire spaces remained invisible unless someone knew precisely where to look. It sounds like something from a mystery novel, yet examples genuinely existed. humans have always been inventive when secrecy becomes necessary. Of course, hidden spaces are only part of the story. Trust also matters enormously. Many households rely upon stewards, servants, guards, and administrators. Valuable items frequently pass through multiple hands. Security, therefore, depends not only on locks, but also on people. Choosing trustworthy individuals becomes a critical task. A perfect lock means little if someone willingly hands over the key. This truth remains relevant in every age. Technology can solve many problems. Human judgment still matters. You spend time observing daily routines within a large manner. Keys are carefully managed. Inventories are recorded. Storage rooms are checked. Visitors are monitored. Access is controlled. The process feels almost administrative. Security has become an organized system rather than a collection of isolated precautions. Historians still argue whether some reported secret passages were actually designed for security purposes or served more mundane functions related to household operations and movement through large buildings. As always, separating fact from legend can be difficult. Stories grow over time. A hidden cupboard becomes a secret chamber. A concealed passage becomes an underground labyrinth. Human imagination rarely favors the less exciting explanation. Yet even when legends exaggerate details, they often preserve a kernel of truth. People genuinely valued concealment. People genuinely feared theft. People genuinely invested enormous effort into protecting what mattered most. The deeper you look into history, the more familiar these concerns become. You begin noticing that security is not solely about property. It is also about identity. Documents prove ownership. Records preserve rights. Seals confirm authority. Losing such items can create consequences extending far beyond financial loss. Protecting information becomes increasingly important. Again, the theme feels surprisingly modern. The methods differ. The goal remains the same. As night deepens outside the manor, the atmosphere softens. Doors are secured. Fires burn lower. Conversations fade. The household settles gradually toward sleep. And with that calm comes an opportunity to slow our own pace for a moment. The road behind you stretches across thousands of years. You have walked through prehistoric villages illuminated by firelight. You have stood beside Egyptian craftsmen shaping wooden locks. You have wandered Greek courtyards hidden behind quiet walls. You have listened to Roman dogs announcing their opinions to entire neighborhoods. You have crossed medieval streets where everyone knows everyone else's business. Now those places begin blending gently together. The heavy wooden beams, the barred doors, the iron-bound chests, the watchful neighbors, the hidden compartments, each represents a small attempt to create safety in an uncertain world. And perhaps that's what connects all these generations most clearly. Not the technology, not the architecture, not even the locks themselves, but the simple desire to rest peacefully at the end of the day, knowing that the people and possessions you care about are protected. So the sounds around you grow quieter now. The fire settles into a warm glow. The distant wind brushes softly against stone walls. The manor sleeps. The castle sleeps. The village beyond sleeps as well. Above them all, stars drift slowly across the night sky.
The quiet manor gradually disappears behind you as the night carries on. The stars remain overhead. Doors stay barred, chests remain locked. Yet something important becomes clear. Even the strongest lock in the world cannot shout for help. For most of history, security depends not only on objects, but on living creatures and alert human beings. You continue down a moonlit road toward a medieval town preparing for another night. Lanterns flicker along the streets. A cool breeze drifts between buildings. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog suddenly erupts into barking. Immediately, another dog joins in. Then another. Within moments, an entire neighborhood seems determined to contribute. Long before electronic alarms, this is one of humanity's most effective warning systems. And unlike modern alarm systems, nobody has to remember the password afterward. One mainstream historical fact is that organized night watches existed in many towns and cities throughout the medieval and early modern periods. Watchmen patrolled streets after dark, looking for fires, suspicious activity, and disturbances that might threaten the community. You spot one now. A watchman moves steadily through the street, carrying a lantern and a staff. His footsteps echo softly against stone. Every so often he pauses, listens, and continues onward. The job is not glamorous. Most nights probably involve a great deal of walking and very little excitement, which from a security perspective is actually excellent. The best security systems often produce boring nights. A peaceful night means the system is working. The watchman's presence serves several purposes at once. He can spot trouble. He can raise an alarm. And perhaps most importantly, people know he is there. Visibility matters. A potential thief prefers darkness and uncertainty. A visible patrol creates the opposite. You follow him through narrow streets where nearly every door is closed. Behind those doors, families sleep. Merchants rest before another day of business. Craftsmen recover from long hours of work. Their safety depends partly on people like him. Yet, human watchmen are only part of the story. Animals contribute heavily as well. You already encountered Roman guard dogs. Their descendants continue working throughout history. Dogs guard farms. Dogs guard workshops. Dogs guard homes. Dogs guard almost anything that stays still long enough. Their senses provide enormous advantages. They hear sounds humans miss. They detect unfamiliar scents. They react quickly, sometimes very quickly, sometimes perhaps a little too quickly. You can easily imagine a medieval dog deciding that a falling leaf constitutes a significant security threat requiring immediate attention. Still, false alarms are preferable to missed dangers. Communities seem willing to tolerate the occasional enthusiastic barking session. Another surprisingly effective guardian appears in several cultures: geese. Yes, geese. The same birds that modern park visitors occasionally avoid with understandable caution. One quirky historical tidbit is that geese gained reputations as excellent warning animals because they are alert, territorial, and remarkably willing to make noise when disturbed. A famous story from ancient Rome tells of sacred geese alerting defenders during a nighttime attack. Whether every detail unfolded exactly as later accounts describe remains debated, but the story endured for centuries. And honestly, anyone familiar with geese finds it entirely believable. Few creatures embrace the responsibility of announcing their opinions more enthusiastically. You walk past a farmhouse where several geese occupy a fenced area. They watch everything, absolutely everything. You suspect they would monitor cloud movements if given the opportunity. As living alarm systems go, they are difficult to ignore. Meanwhile, bells become another crucial security tool. Bells, church bells, town bells, alarm bells, signal bells. The principle is simple. If trouble appears, make enough noise that everyone notices. Before telephones, radios, or emergency alerts, bells allow information to spread quickly. A single ringing bell can summon assistance across an entire community. Fire, ring the bell. Intruders, ring the bell. Emergency, definitely ring the bell. The technology is uncomplicated but highly effective. Communication itself becomes part of security. A warning only helps if people receive it in time.
You continue into a larger town where organized watch systems have become increasingly formal. Schedules exist, responsibilities exist, patrol routes exist. Security is becoming institutional rather than purely informal. As populations grow, casual observation alone no longer suffices. Structured systems emerge. The pattern appears again and again throughout history. Growth creates complexity. Complexity requires organization. Organization creates specialized roles. Soon, entire professions become associated with maintaining public safety. Historians often point to medieval and early modern night watches as important predecessors to later policing systems. The connection is not always direct. Different places develop differently. But the general idea of designated individuals responsible for nighttime security becomes increasingly common. Historians still argue whether some watches functioned primarily as effective security forces or as symbolic demonstrations of civic order. The answer likely varies from place to place. Some towns maintained highly capable patrols. Others perhaps relied more heavily on community participation. As always, history resists simple universal explanations. You notice another interesting feature. Many communities attempt to reduce risk before trouble begins. Curfews sometimes exist. Gates may close at certain hours. Travel at night can be discouraged. Prevention often proves easier than response. The idea remains familiar today. Good security frequently focuses on reducing opportunities rather than merely reacting afterward. Meanwhile, households continue combining multiple protections. A family might rely on strong doors, locks, neighbors, dogs, and local watchmen simultaneously. No single measure guarantees success. Together, however, they create resilience. The layered approach keeps reappearing. It survived prehistoric villages. It survived Egypt. It survived Greece and Rome. It survives now, and it will continue surviving far into the future. As midnight approaches, the town grows still quieter. The watchman's lantern drifts slowly through the darkness like a moving star. Dogs occasionally bark in the distance. Geese, thankfully, remain mostly silent for the moment. The atmosphere feels secure, not because danger has vanished, because people have prepared for it. That distinction matters. Security has never been about eliminating every possible risk. It's always been about managing risk intelligently. The realization follows you as dawn begins hinting at the horizon. Soon, your journey will carry you beyond Europe, toward the great civilizations of Asia, where entirely different architectural traditions, ingenious locking mechanisms, and unique approaches to household protection reveal new chapters in humanity's long search for safety. For now, though, the lantern continues glowing softly. The streets remain calm, and the old living alarm systems stand ready, just as they have for generations.
The watchman's lantern slowly fades behind you as the first pale light of morning appears on the horizon. The dogs settle, the geese relax, at least by goose standards, and your journey continues eastward across mountains, deserts, rivers, and trade routes that connect vast civilizations. The story of home security is no longer confined to Europe and the Mediterranean. Across Asia, people are developing their own ingenious solutions to the timeless problem of keeping homes, valuables, and families safe. You arrive first in ancient China. The scale is immediately impressive. Large cities bustle with merchants and officials. Rural villages stretch across fertile landscapes. Roads carry travelers, traders, and government messengers between distant regions. As populations grow and commerce expands, security becomes increasingly important. Yet the solutions often look different from those you have already encountered. One mainstream historical fact is that Chinese craftsmen developed highly sophisticated metal locks centuries ago,
including intricate padlocks and puzzle-like mechanisms that required specific movements to open. You examine one carefully. At first glance, it appears simple. Then you realize it is anything but simple. The lock contains hidden components. The key must be inserted correctly. Sometimes additional movements are required. Occasionally, the mechanism feels closer to a puzzle than a straightforward lock. You can almost imagine an ancient craftsman smiling quietly while designing it. A thief expecting an easy challenge might receive an unpleasant surprise. The artistry is remarkable. Many locks are not merely functional objects, they are decorative works as well. Animals, symbols, and elegant metalwork appear throughout their designs. Security and craftsmanship become intertwined. People want protection, certainly, but they also appreciate beauty. Human beings rarely miss an opportunity to decorate practical objects. Even today, many products combine utility with aesthetics. The tradition stretches back thousands of years. As you continue through Chinese towns and villages, you notice another important aspect of security: storage. Large households often contain multiple layers of access: outer gates, courtyards, private rooms, storage areas. Movement through the property is carefully structured. Visitors do not automatically gain access to every space. The arrangement feels familiar. You encountered similar principles in Roman homes and medieval manors. Different cultures often arrive at comparable solutions because they face comparable challenges. Control access, limit visibility, protect valuable items. The details vary. The logic remains consistent. You eventually come across a collection of beautifully crafted chests secured with metal locks. Documents, jewelry, coins, and household valuables remain inside. Again, the pattern emerges. Portable wealth requires portable security. As trade grows, so does the need to safeguard movable property. Meanwhile, your journey carries you farther east toward Japan. The landscape changes, architecture changes, and with those changes come new approaches to protection. Traditional Japanese homes often rely on materials and designs quite different from the stone structures and heavy wooden fortifications common in parts of Europe. Sliding doors, wooden frameworks, and carefully arranged interiors create a unique environment. At first, you might wonder whether such homes are less secure. The answer is more complicated. Security depends on context. One mainstream historical reality often overlooked is that many traditional Japanese communities placed enormous value on social order, reputation, and community relationships. Just as in early villages and medieval towns, social expectations contribute significantly to security. A tightly connected society can discourage certain forms of crime through social accountability alone. You begin noticing that physical barriers are only part of protection. Community trust matters. Family reputation matters. Local customs matter. The same lesson has appeared repeatedly throughout your travels. Technology alone never tells the whole story. People matter too. As you explore further, you encounter ingenious hidden compartments, known in some periods as secret storage spaces, built into furniture and architecture. Craftsmen create concealed drawers and hidden compartments with remarkable skill. Some remain almost invisible unless you know exactly where to look. The concept reminds you of those hidden chambers and secret niches from European manor houses. Again, different cultures independently develop similar ideas. If valuable items exist, someone eventually invents a clever place to hide them. Human creativity seems wonderfully predictable in that regard. One quirky historical tidbit involves so-called puzzle boxes and secret compartment containers that became associated with remarkable craftsmanship in parts of Asia. These boxes sometimes require specific sequences of movements to open. Slide one panel, shift another, move a hidden section. Only then does the container reveal its contents. Imagine trying to explain the opening process to a friend who insists on skipping instructions. The friendship might not survive the experience. Yet these creations showcase an important principle. Sometimes security relies on knowledge rather than force. A heavy chest uses weight. A strong door uses strength. A puzzle mechanism uses information. Different paths to the same goal. You travel onward through bustling markets where merchants store goods overnight. Locks secure warehouses. Guards patrol entrances. Animals provide warnings. Community networks share information. The elements vary, but the pattern remains familiar. Layered security continues proving effective. Historians still argue whether some elaborate locks found in museums were primarily practical devices or prestige objects intended to demonstrate craftsmanship and status. The debate is understandable. Many surviving examples are extraordinarily beautiful. Were they everyday tools? Luxury possessions? Both? The answer likely differs from one object to another. History rarely fits neatly into simple categories. As afternoon light filters through wooden buildings, you reflect on how many approaches humanity has developed. The prehistoric villagers trusted heavy beams. Egyptians trusted wooden pin locks. Romans trusted architecture and guard dogs. Medieval towns trusted watchmen and community vigilance. Asian craftsmen introduced elegant metal locks, hidden mechanisms, and sophisticated designs that transformed security into an art form. Every culture contributes something. Every generation adds a new idea, and each innovation spreads through trade, travel, and observation. People learn from one another. A merchant sees a useful lock. A craftsman copies the design. An improvement follows, then another. Technology moves along the same roads as commerce. As evening approaches once more, caravans begin arriving from distant regions. Pack animals carry textiles, spices, metals, and countless other valuable goods. Merchants count inventories carefully. Storage rooms are secured. Locks click into place. And you realize that protecting a home is only part of the story. What happens when wealth must travel? How do traders defend valuable cargo while crossing deserts, mountains, forests, and unfamiliar territories? The answer awaits on the great trade routes of the world, where portable locks, chained chests, merchant ingenuity, and constant vigilance become essential companions on the road.
The sun begins sinking toward the horizon as you leave behind villages, cities, and family homes. Ahead stretches a different world entirely, a world of movement. For most of history, wealth does not stay in one place. It travels. Silk crosses deserts. Spices cross oceans. Silver moves between kingdoms. Precious fabrics, gemstones, books, tools, and countless other goods pass from hand to hand across enormous distances. And wherever wealth travels, security must travel with it. You find yourself walking alongside a merchant caravan, moving slowly across a dusty trade route. The line of animals stretches into the distance. Bells jingle softly from harnesses. Guards scan the horizon. Merchants keep careful watch over their cargo. Everyone here understands an uncomfortable reality. A locked house is one thing. Protecting valuables while constantly moving is another challenge entirely. One mainstream historical fact is that merchants throughout the ancient and medieval worlds often relied on strong boxes, lockable chests, seals, guards, and organized caravans to protect goods during long-distance trade. The caravan itself acts as a security system. Numbers matter.
A lone traveler carrying valuable cargo presents an attractive target. A large group is considerably less inviting. You notice how carefully everything is organized. Animals remain grouped together. Guards occupy strategic positions. Valuable goods are monitored constantly. Even at rest stops, procedures exist. Nothing is left entirely unattended. Security becomes a daily routine, a habit rather than a single action. That principle survives into modern life. The safest systems often depend less on dramatic measures and more on consistent practices. You stop beside a merchant inspecting a sturdy chest. Iron bands reinforce its wooden frame. A lock secures the lid. The box bears years spent on the road, scratches, repairs, weathering, yet it remains functional. Portable security requires durability. A delicate lock might work beautifully in a palace. A caravan crossing hundreds of miles demands something tougher. The merchant checks the lock repeatedly, not because he distrusts it, because valuable cargo encourages caution. If you carried your entire livelihood in a single chest, you might check it frequently too. Perhaps very frequently, possibly every 5 minutes. Human anxiety has always been remarkably consistent. The road continues through open countryside. As darkness approaches, the caravan establishes camp. Animals are gathered close together. Fires are lit. Guards take positions. The arrangement resembles a temporary fortress, not an impenetrable one, just secure enough. Again and again, you encounter the same philosophy. Security rarely seeks perfection. It seeks advantage. Make theft difficult. Increase risk. Reduce opportunity. Encourage would-be criminals to choose easier targets elsewhere. You notice another important tool: seals. Wax seals, lead seals, official markings. These devices do not necessarily prevent access. Instead, they reveal whether access has occurred. That distinction matters enormously. A merchant may not stop someone from opening a container, but if the seal is broken, evidence remains. One mainstream historical reality often overlooked is that seals played major roles in administration, trade, and authentication across many civilizations. A sealed document communicates authority. A sealed container signals legitimacy. A broken seal raises questions, sometimes uncomfortable questions, and merchants generally prefer avoiding uncomfortable questions involving missing merchandise. The idea feels surprisingly modern. Today, packages often contain tamper-evident features. Ancient traders used the technology available to them. The principle remains unchanged. You continue along one of the great trade networks connecting distant regions. The famous Silk Road carries not only goods, but ideas. Locks travel. Security practices travel. Knowledge travels. A merchant encounters a useful design in one city and introduces it elsewhere. Innovation spreads gradually along the same routes as commerce. Technology rarely develops in isolation. People observe, borrow, adapt, improve. The process never truly stops. One quirky historical tidbit concerns trick containers and deceptive storage methods used by some travelers. Certain boxes are designed to appear ordinary while concealing hidden compartments. Others disguise valuable contents beneath less interesting items. A thief expecting treasure might discover nothing more exciting than clothing, or so it appears. Meanwhile, the actual valuables remain hidden elsewhere. The strategy relies on misdirection. Magicians would approve. So would many security experts. Sometimes the best protection is preventing attention in the first place. You observe experienced merchants practicing another important habit. They share information. Dangerous roads become known. Unsafe routes gain reputations. Reliable inns attract repeat customers. Trustworthy contacts become valuable assets. Security depends heavily on knowledge networks. Information itself becomes a protective resource. Knowing where risks exist can be just as important as carrying a lock. Historians still argue whether some famous stories about merchants' security measures have been exaggerated over time by travelers eager to entertain audiences. The possibility seems likely. Travel literature often contains colorful details. Some are accurate, some are embellished, and some appear to have grown dramatically during repeated retellings. Humans have always enjoyed a good story, especially when it makes the storyteller seem clever. Even so, the broader reality remains clear. Long-distance trade creates powerful incentives for security innovation. The more valuable the cargo, the more effort people invest in protecting it. You pass through a busy market town where merchants unload goods into warehouses. Heavy doors secure storage buildings. Locks protect inventories. Guards monitor entrances. Business and security become inseparable. Without trust, trade struggles. Without protection, trust becomes difficult. Every successful market depends partly on confidence that property will remain where it belongs. As evening deepens, you sit near a campfire listening to travelers exchange stories. Some discuss difficult journeys. Others discuss weather. A few discuss thefts narrowly avoided thanks to cautious planning. The conversation reveals something important. Security is rarely about a single invention. It is a mindset, a collection of habits, a way of thinking ahead. You have seen this lesson repeated across thousands of years. The prehistoric villager stacking heavy beams understood it. The Egyptian lockmaker understood it. The Roman homeowner with a warning mosaic understood it. The medieval watchman understood it. The merchant crossing deserts understands it too. Different tools, same goal. Protect what matters. The fire crackles softly as darkness settles around the camp. The caravan prepares for another night. Locks secure chests. Guards begin their watches. Animals rest nearby. And somewhere beyond the circle of firelight, another layer of protection is quietly waiting. Not a lock, not a guard, not a wall, but something many people throughout history believed could be just as important. Symbols, charms, blessings, protective rituals. For countless generations, people sought security not only from practical defenses, but also from forces they believed existed beyond the visible world. And that journey into folklore, belief, and supernatural protection awaits with the coming dawn.
The campfire burns low beside the trade route. Merchants sleep beneath blankets. Guards continue their quiet patrols. The stars wheel slowly overhead. Everything appears secure. Locks protect the chests. Watchmen guard the camp. Animals provide warnings. Yet, as you listen to the soft nighttime sounds, you begin noticing something that has followed humanity throughout every age you have visited. People rarely rely only on physical protection. They also seek comfort from belief. The desire is understandable. A lock can secure a door. A wall can surround a town. A guard can watch a gate. But uncertainty always remains. And where uncertainty exists, people often turn towards symbols, rituals, traditions, and protective charms. You leave the caravan behind and continue into a world where home security extends beyond wood, iron, and stone. Across continents and centuries, families place objects near doors, carve symbols into walls, hang protective ornaments, and perform rituals intended to safeguard their homes. Whether these measures provide physical security is one question. Whether they provide emotional reassurance is another. And reassurance has always mattered. One mainstream historical fact is that many cultures throughout history placed protective symbols above entrances or near thresholds,
believing these objects would ward off misfortune, evil influences, or unwanted visitors. The doorway holds special significance. It marks the boundary between inside and outside, between safety and uncertainty, between family space and the wider world. Because of this symbolic importance, entrances often become focal points for protective traditions. You approach a medieval home where a carved symbol appears above the door. Nearby hangs a small religious emblem. The family living here likely sees no contradiction between practical and spiritual protection. They use locks, they use bars, they also use blessings. To them, all three belong together. The combination feels natural. Throughout history, people have frequently layered supernatural protection on top of physical protection, much as they layered locks on top of doors and walls. You continue onward and encounter similar traditions in many places: written blessings, protective inscriptions, sacred symbols, small charms, decorative objects believed to attract good fortune. The details vary enormously from culture to culture. The underlying hope remains remarkably consistent. People want their homes to be safe. That desire crosses every boundary of geography and time. One particularly fascinating tradition involves threshold markings. In various regions, people place symbols directly on door frames or entryways. Some are religious, some are cultural, some blend multiple traditions together. The doorway itself becomes a protected space, a kind of symbolic checkpoint between the known and the unknown. You begin realizing that many protective customs serve more than one purpose. A symbol may express faith. It may reinforce community identity. It may remind family members of shared values. Its significance extends beyond security alone. Human behavior is rarely motivated by only one thing. A small object hanging near a doorway can carry layers of meaning. One quirky historical tidbit involves protective shoes hidden inside walls. Yes, shoes. Archaeologists in parts of Europe have occasionally discovered old shoes concealed within buildings. Researchers believe some were intentionally placed there as protective objects. Exactly why remains debated. Perhaps they served as charms. Perhaps they reflected folk beliefs now poorly understood. Perhaps the explanation varies from one case to another. Whatever the reason, somewhere in history, a homeowner apparently looked at an old shoe and concluded that it belonged inside a wall. History remains wonderfully unpredictable. You can almost picture future archaeologists uncovering modern storage closets and trying to explain why so many households possess mysterious collections of tangled charging cables. Every era leaves puzzles. Some are easier to solve than others. As you continue your journey, stories and legends begin appearing everywhere. Certain houses gain reputations. Certain objects become associated with luck. Certain rituals are believed to protect families. Some traditions survive for centuries. Others fade gradually. Yet the emotional function remains familiar. Protection is not solely about preventing harm. It is also about reducing fear. People sleep better when they feel secure. That truth matters. Sometimes a symbol above a door accomplishes that goal. Sometimes a ritual before bedtime does. The psychological dimension of security has always been powerful. You arrive in a village preparing for a seasonal celebration. Residents decorate homes with symbolic objects. Children carry lanterns. Families gather together. The atmosphere feels festive. Protection here is woven into community life. Shared traditions strengthen social bonds, and strong social bonds often contribute to actual security as well. Neighbors who trust one another tend to look out for one another. The practical and symbolic become intertwined. Historians still argue whether certain protective customs originated primarily from religious beliefs, social traditions, psychological reassurance, or combinations of all three. The debate is difficult because human motivations are rarely simple. A practice might begin for one reason and continue for another. Meaning evolves over time. What matters to one generation may differ from what mattered to the generation that came before. You notice another recurring theme. Many protective objects are visible. They announce themselves openly. Unlike hidden compartments or secret locks, these symbols are meant to be seen. Visibility itself becomes part of their function. A visitor immediately recognizes them. A family sees them every day. They reinforce a sense of security simply by being present. Modern life contains similar examples: security signs, neighborhood watch notices, visible cameras. Even when their practical effectiveness varies, their presence influences behavior. The psychology of protection has not changed nearly as much as the technology. As evening approaches, you reflect on the remarkable variety of solutions humanity has created. Heavy beams, wooden locks, iron bars, guard dogs, watchmen, geese, strong boxes, hidden compartments, protective symbols, blessings. Every generation contributes something new. Every culture adds its own ideas, and together they form a long, fascinating story about humanity's search for safety. The sun begins setting once more. Golden light stretches across rooftops. Families close their doors for the evening. Some slide bars into place. Some check locks. Some glance briefly at a charm hanging near the entrance. Whatever form protection takes, the intention remains familiar. Create a space where people can rest, a place where they can feel secure, a place they can call home. Yet enormous changes are approaching. The world is moving toward an age of industry, machines, mass production, and new forms of engineering. Locks will soon become stronger, more precise, and more widely available than ever before. The old traditions will not disappear overnight, but a technological transformation is coming, and it will change the history of home security forever.
The last glow of sunset fades from the village as your journey continues forward through time. The world begins changing faster than ever before. For thousands of years, locks have been handmade. A skilled craftsman shapes each component individually. Keys are forged one at a time. Mechanisms vary from region to region. Security depends heavily on local expertise. Then industry arrives, and everything accelerates. You step into a busy town during the early stages of industrialization. The sounds are immediately different from the worlds you have visited before. Steam engines rumble in the distance. Workshops hum with activity. Metalworkers shape components with increasing precision. Factories produce goods on scales previously unimaginable. The age of mass production has begun, and home security is about to change forever. One mainstream historical fact is that the 18th and 19th centuries saw major advances in lock manufacturing, precision engineering, and standardized production, making reliable locks more widely available to ordinary people. For centuries, strong locks often remained expensive possessions. Now, improved manufacturing techniques begin reducing costs. More households gain access to better security. Technology that was once relatively specialized becomes increasingly common. You watch a locksmith examining a newly manufactured lock. The craftsmanship remains impressive, but something is different: consistency. Parts fit together with greater precision. Mechanisms operate more smoothly. Production becomes more predictable. That predictability matters enormously. A lock is only as reliable as its components. Better manufacturing leads to better performance. The relationship seems obvious now. At the time, it represents a significant achievement.
You continue walking through streets lined with workshops and businesses. Commerce is expanding rapidly. Cities are growing. Populations are increasing. And with growth comes demand. People want stronger locks, more secure doors, safer storage, improved protection for homes and businesses. The market responds enthusiastically. Lockmakers compete with one another. Each claims superior security. Each advertises innovative features. Each insists that their design represents the future. Some are correct, others are perhaps slightly optimistic. Human marketing practices, it turns out, have deep historical roots. You can almost hear a 19th century advertisement declaring that a particular lock is absolutely impossible to defeat. History suggests caution whenever someone uses the word impossible. Someone, somewhere, immediately accepts that statement as a challenge, and that pattern will become very important later. For now, however, innovation continues accelerating. New metalworking techniques allow increasingly complex mechanisms. Precision engineering opens new possibilities. Designs become more sophisticated. Security enters a new era. One famous development involves the rise of improved pin tumbler systems, descended in principle from those ancient Egyptian locks you encountered thousands of years ago. The family resemblance remains surprisingly clear. The materials have changed, the precision has improved, the engineering has advanced dramatically, yet the underlying concept survives. Ancient ideas often prove remarkably durable. The Egyptians would likely be astonished by modern locks. At the same time, they might recognize more of the mechanism than you would expect. Innovation frequently builds upon foundations laid centuries earlier. You enter a bustling hardware shop where locks of many varieties are displayed. Small locks, large locks, door locks, padlocks, chest locks. The sheer variety is striking. Consumers now have choices, many choices, possibly too many choices. You briefly imagine a 19th century homeowner spending an entire afternoon comparing lock specifications. Some experiences appear timeless. One quirky historical tidbit involves public lock competitions and demonstrations. Manufacturers occasionally challenge rivals, showcase new designs, or invite experts to test security claims. These events attract considerable attention. After all, everyone enjoys watching confidence encounter reality. A lockmaker proudly presents a supposedly unbeatable mechanism. Observers gather. Experts examine it. Tension builds. Will it resist attack, or will someone discover a weakness? The outcome often determines reputations. The stakes can be surprisingly high. You continue through increasingly modern neighborhoods. The architecture changes. Urban living expands. Apartment buildings become more common. Businesses operate on larger scales. Banks require secure storage. Warehouses protect valuable inventories. Entire industries depend upon trustworthy security systems. Locks are no longer merely household conveniences. They become critical infrastructure. Without reliable security, modern commerce struggles to function. The connection between economic growth and security becomes unmistakable. People invest where they feel protected. Businesses expand where property can be safeguarded. Confidence fuels development. Security creates confidence. The cycle reinforces itself. Historians still argue whether certain celebrated lock designs were truly revolutionary or whether their reputations grew partly through effective marketing and public perception. The debate is understandable. Technical performance matters. Public trust matters too. A secure lock that nobody trusts has limited value. A trusted lock influences behavior. Perception and reality often interact in fascinating ways. As evening approaches, gas lamps illuminate city streets. Shops close their doors. Business owners secure inventories. Families return home. Locks click into place across thousands of buildings. The sound is becoming increasingly familiar, a small metallic confirmation that private space remains protected. You pause to reflect on how far the journey has come, from wooden beams in prehistoric villages, to giant Egyptian keys, to Roman ring keys, to medieval bars and fortified chests, to hidden compartments and merchant strongboxes, to mass-produced precision locks. Thousands of years of experimentation, adaptation, and improvement have brought humanity here. Yet one constant remains. Every advance creates new challenges. Every improvement inspires new attempts to overcome it. No lock exists in isolation. Somewhere, inevitably, someone is studying it, testing it, questioning it, searching for weaknesses. And that means the next chapter of the story is unavoidable, because the history of security is also the history of the people determined to defeat it. Soon you will meet ingenious lockpickers, ambitious burglars, skeptical experts, and inventors engaged in an endless contest, a contest that continues even today. The arms race between locks and thieves is about to begin.
The city settles into evening as thousands of newly manufactured locks click shut across homes, shops, warehouses, and offices. The sound is reassuring, yet every lock carries an unspoken challenge. Can it be opened, not by the owner, by someone else? You have followed the story of security through thousands of years of human history, and now you arrive at one of its most fascinating truths. The history of locks is inseparable from the history of lock pickers. Every improvement inspires a response. Every defense inspires an attempt to overcome it. Every claim of absolute security eventually attracts scrutiny. The contest never truly ends. It simply evolves. You find yourself standing inside a 19th century exhibition hall where manufacturers proudly display their latest lock designs. Polished metal gleams beneath bright lights. Inventors explain mechanisms in great detail. Confidence fills the room, perhaps a little too much confidence. One mainstream historical fact is that lock competitions and public challenges became important ways for manufacturers to demonstrate security, particularly during the 19th century when advances in lock technology accelerated rapidly. The atmosphere feels almost theatrical. A lockmaker announces that his design is exceptionally secure. Observers gather. Experts examine the mechanism. The crowd waits. Can the lock withstand attack, or will someone discover a weakness? The outcome affects reputations, sales, and prestige. For manufacturers, these demonstrations matter enormously. You quickly realize that security is not merely a technical problem, it is also a psychological one. People must believe a lock works. Trust becomes part of the product, and trust is fragile. One successful challenge can change public opinion dramatically. Among the most famous figures in this story is Alfred Charles Hobbs, a skilled lock expert who famously demonstrated weaknesses in several highly regarded locks during the 19th century. His work created considerable controversy. Some manufacturers disliked the attention. Others welcomed the opportunity to improve their designs. The broader lesson was clear. Claims should be tested. Assumptions should be questioned. Security benefits from scrutiny. You watch as experts carefully examine lock mechanisms. Patience matters. Knowledge matters. Observation matters. Many successful lockpickers rely less on force and more on understanding. A lock is a machine. Machines have rules. If someone understands those rules deeply enough, opportunities emerge. This reality surprises many people. Popular stories often depict dramatic break-ins involving brute force.
In practice, skill and information prove more valuable. The same principle appears throughout history. Knowledge is powerful, sometimes extraordinarily powerful. Of course, most thieves are not master lockpickers. Throughout much of history, simpler methods remain common. Breaking windows, forcing doors, exploiting carelessness, taking advantage of opportunity. A strong lock helps, but no security system exists in isolation. You remember the lessons from earlier centuries. Layers matter. Locks work best alongside other protections. Good habits matter. Awareness matters. Community matters. The oldest security principles never disappear. They simply adapt. One quirky historical tidbit involves challenge locks designed specifically to puzzle and impress observers. Some locksmiths create mechanisms featuring hidden features, unusual movements, or deceptive designs. These locks function partly as demonstrations of craftsmanship. Opening them requires patience and insight. Sometimes they resemble mechanical riddles. The creators clearly enjoy showing what is possible. You cannot help admiring the creativity. Humans seem incapable of encountering a practical object without eventually turning it into a competition. As industrialization continues, the contest intensifies. Locks become more sophisticated. Tools become more sophisticated. Knowledge spreads more rapidly. Books circulate. Technical information becomes easier to share. Innovation accelerates on both sides. The pattern resembles an arms race. One improvement prompts another, then another, then another. No final victory ever arrives, only continual adaptation. You visit a locksmith's workshop where new designs are under development. The inventor studies weaknesses in existing products, not to exploit them, to eliminate them. That distinction is important. Security often advances because people actively search for flaws. Identifying weaknesses allows improvement. The process can feel uncomfortable, yet it drives progress. Historians still argue whether some celebrated historical lock defeats were as dramatic as later retellings suggest. Stories tend to grow with repetition. A successful demonstration becomes a legendary triumph. A technical achievement becomes an epic contest. Human beings enjoy memorable narratives, especially when cleverness defeats confidence. Even allowing for exaggeration, however, the broader pattern remains undeniable. Security improves through challenge. Testing reveals vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities inspire innovation. Innovation creates stronger protections. The cycle continues. You begin noticing how familiar this pattern feels. It extends far beyond locks. Architecture evolves in response to threats. Trade systems evolve in response to risks. Communities evolve in response to changing circumstances. Human history often advances through cycles of problem and solution. Security provides one of the clearest examples. As the years pass, new technologies emerge. Improved safes, better locking mechanisms, advanced manufacturing, professional security services, insurance systems. The field becomes increasingly specialized. Yet despite all these developments, certain truths remain remarkably constant. People still forget keys. People still lose important items. People still occasionally lock themselves out. Some traditions transcend every technological era. You imagine explaining to a medieval homeowner that future generations will possess electronic access systems, biometric scanners, and digital security networks. Then you explain that people will still manage to lock themselves out of their houses. The medieval homeowner would probably nod knowingly. Human nature changes slowly. As night deepens around the city, you reflect on the long journey so far. The prehistoric villager trusted heavy beams. The Egyptian trusted wooden pins. The Roman trusted architecture and dogs. The merchant trusted strong boxes and seals. The noble trusted hidden compartments. The industrial homeowner trusted precision engineering. Each generation believed it possessed effective solutions, and often it did, for a while, because security is never a destination. It is a process, an ongoing conversation between protection and challenge, a conversation that continues into the modern world. Ahead lies the final stage of your journey, the age of electronic systems, smart devices, cameras, and digital access. Yet, as you will soon discover, many of the oldest ideas in home protection remain surprisingly alive beneath all the new technology.
The city lights shimmer softly in the distance as your journey approaches its final destination. Thousands of years have passed since you stood beside those first farming villages where heavy wooden beams blocked simple doorways. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen. Kingdoms have expanded. Empires have disappeared. Locks have evolved from carved wooden mechanisms into precise metal devices, and eventually into technologies that would seem magical to your distant ancestors. Yet, the story is not quite as straightforward as it appears, because as you step into the modern world, you begin noticing something curious. Many of the oldest ideas never truly vanished, they merely changed their appearance. You find yourself standing in a quiet neighborhood after sunset. Streetlights cast gentle pools of light across sidewalks. Houses line the road. Cars rest in driveways. At first glance, the scene seems completely disconnected from prehistoric villages and medieval towns. Look closer. The similarities begin appearing everywhere. One mainstream historical fact is that modern home security systems combine multiple layers of protection, including locks, cameras, lights, alarms, neighborhood awareness, and controlled access points. Layered security, the same principle you encountered again and again throughout history. The prehistoric villager relied on walls, neighbors, dogs, and barriers. The modern homeowner relies on locks, cameras, lights, alarms, and community awareness. Different tools, same strategy. You approach a front door equipped with a smart lock. No physical key is required. A code opens the door. Perhaps a smartphone does. Perhaps biometric verification does. To someone from ancient Egypt, the device would seem miraculous. Yet, at its heart, the goal remains unchanged. Control access. Decide who may enter. Protect the people and possessions inside. The lock's appearance has transformed. Its purpose has not. You continue down the street and notice security cameras mounted beneath roof lines. These devices observe continuously. They record activity. They provide evidence when needed. In some ways, they resemble the watchful neighbors of earlier centuries. The method is different. The function is surprisingly familiar. Observation remains valuable. Humans have always wanted to know what happens near their homes when they are not looking. Technology simply expands that ability. A camera never sleeps. A medieval watchman eventually does. At least one hopes he does after finishing his shift. Otherwise, the work-life balance becomes concerning. You smile quietly and continue walking. The neighborhood feels peaceful. Porch lights glow warmly. Motion-sensitive lighting occasionally activates. Again, old ideas appear beneath new forms. For centuries, people used lanterns, torches, and visible illumination to discourage unwanted activity. Modern lighting performs a similar role. Visibility reduces uncertainty. Darkness favors concealment. Light favors awareness. The principle survives intact. You pass a house displaying a security sign near the entrance.
immediately another historical connection emerges. Remember those Roman mosaics warning visitors about dogs? Remember protective symbols displayed near medieval doorways? Visible security messaging has existed for thousands of years. People have long understood the value of deterrence. Sometimes, the most effective protection is convincing someone not to try in the first place. Human psychology remains remarkably consistent. One quirky modern tidbit is that some homeowners now receive alerts on their phones whenever someone approaches the front door. Imagine explaining this to a medieval watchman. He spends hours patrolling streets in the rain. Meanwhile, a future homeowner receives a notification while sitting comfortably on a couch. History occasionally rewards patience. Yet modern technology introduces new challenges. Digital systems can malfunction. Passwords can be forgotten. Networks can fail. Electronic devices require maintenance. Every innovation creates fresh vulnerabilities. The ancient pattern continues. New protections inspire new threats. New threats inspire new solutions. The conversation never ends. Historians still argue whether future generations will view current security technologies as revolutionary breakthroughs or merely transitional steps towards something even more advanced. The debate is impossible to settle. Every generation tends to assume it is living near the peak of innovation. History repeatedly demonstrates otherwise. There is always another development waiting around the corner. You pause and reflect on the long road behind you. The first villagers who blocked entrances with heavy beams, the Egyptian craftsmen shaping wooden pin locks, the Greek households built around protected courtyards, the Roman homes guarded by warning mosaics and vigilant dogs, the medieval watchmen carrying lanterns through dark streets, the merchants securing cargo along distant trade routes, the hidden compartments concealed inside manor houses, the protective charms hanging beside doorways, the locksmiths refining metal mechanisms during the industrial age, the experts testing and challenging every claim of security. All of them contributed something. Each generation inherited knowledge from those who came before. Each generation added its own improvements. The result is the world around you, a world where protecting a home often feels routine. Turn a key, enter a code, check a camera, lock a door. Simple actions supported by thousands of years of accumulated experience. The realization feels oddly comforting. Human beings have always cared about safety. They have always sought peace of mind. They have always wanted a place where they could rest, protected from uncertainty beyond the threshold. That desire connects every era you have visited. The technologies differ. The emotions remain familiar. And now, as the evening grows quieter and the journey nears its end, the pace begins to slow. The neighborhood becomes still. Streetlights glow softly beneath the night sky. A distant breeze moves through trees. Windows shine warmly in the darkness, and all those centuries begin blending together into a single long story. A story of ingenuity, a story of adaptation, a story of ordinary people doing their best to protect the places they called home. The night settles gently around you. The roads grow quiet. The doors are closed. The locks are fastened. And the long search for security continues, just as it always has, one generation at a time.